Hello everybody, this is John Locke from Locke in Your Success, and I'm just doing a quick video on the option view situation and some suggestions and what I've been doing about what's been going on with the system and so forth. So if you'd like more information on this, just visit lockeinyoursuccess.com, L-O-C-K-E, inyoursuccess.com. Before we get going, we just have to remind you that this presentation is for educational purposes only. We're not broker-dealers or financial advisors, and we're not making any specific trade recommendations. Also, please be aware that your risk in trading options is substantial, and make sure you are aware of all your risks prior to placing any trades. And also, we may be using some hypothetical positions as well as live positions, but anything hypothetical is believed to be as accurately represented as possible. Here is our contact information. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at option view here for a minute. So a little bit of background information. We've always been using option view for our programs that we sell, the M3, the Bearish Butterfly, the Rock, M21, and so forth. And the reason we've used option view is because they have this modeling called a variable model. Now, one thing that a lot of new people maybe don't understand yet is they will take a look at your modeling or your analyzed graph here, and take a look at your T+0 line, and they just assume that's correct. They don't really realize there's a whole lot of settings behind it and a lot of different things you can do in order to manipulate your T+0 line. Now, when I put my programs together, I was looking for a model that acted not necessarily the most accurate model for a particular situation, but the model that gives us the most consistent model for the widest variety of conditions. You see, one of the things that happens is, depending on the model that you have, is some models work very well in some conditions or market conditions, as in maybe really volatile markets, and but they might go kind of crazy or not work well in grinding up markets. Some of the other models might work very well in grinding up markets, but go crazy when the market goes volatile, or any amount of given situations. So the standard model that ThinkorSwim uses is very close to this EIOIO model, which stands for every individual option on its own. If we take a look at a model like this, generally in very volatile conditions, this model is very representative of what's going to happen to the position. However, when the volatility gets really low and you get this grinding up situation and you start to have really wide put call skews, what tends to happen with this model is it starts to show way more down risk than you really have, right? And it doesn't show the way that it doesn't show a dip in this T+0 line. So what you end up with is essentially, if your position is anywhere in the range from about here on the tent to up in here, you have a position that's showing or a model that's showing much more positive delta than the actual position is, which means it's not showing you the risk if the market moves up that you're going to lose a bunch of money. And what ends up happening is the market moves up, you lose all this profit and loss, and you don't know why. So knowing this shortcoming of the model, we were looking at some other things, and option view also has this thing called a variable model. Variable model is going to show, you'll notice the T+0 line is quite different, right? We have a slope in the T+0 line, and we have a hump in the back here. And what I had found, at least with the previous model, or the modeling that was available to us from about 2006 to 2000 and earlier this year, earlier 2015, that we were having that model acted very well on certain settings. Those settings were, if you come to the Define tab, I'm sorry, let me go to the Modeling tab. If I come to the Modeling tab, those settings were Yates, true delta gamma, true theta, and using combined put call skews. Those were the primary settings that we were using. And we were also using something here, one of the things you can do here is you can set how many strikes are shown on our option view graph. You can set them to large, or you can set them to small or moderate. Now, what some people don't realize is that the calculations within the system go off of all the strikes that happen to be available on the matrix. So if you set your scale to small and you're not showing that many options, it only uses those options to calculate t plus 0 line. If you set it on large, it uses many more options. If you add in 5-point strikes, it adds in even more options. Generally I always set these on large because I wanted projections on my t plus 0 line as far out as possible, right? Because the whole concept behind, well, what you should be doing market neutral trading is the profile of your whole t plus 0 line. And that being the case, we want to make sure that we have decent projections here, so we set them on large. Otherwise, the t plus 0 line loses its sensitivity as it goes out away from your price. So we had that on large. And then back again in the model, we were using combined put call skews, which actually went against the recommendations of OptionView and some other people. And now the reason we use these settings again is not because they are the most accurate, but rather because they're the most consistent over the widest variety of conditions. So if you uncombine put call skews, when you start to get severe low volatility grinding, then if you don't use them, you're not showing enough negative delta in your position. If you uncombine them, you're better off in certain maybe downward movement situations, right? So everything has pluses and minuses depending on how you set your model, and it's kind of how you want your model to react. For the purposes of, like I said, of our programs where I'm showing people how to make money, get profitable consistently over long periods of time through virtually any market condition, right? We want to have the model that not is the most accurate in specific circumstances, but is the most accurate and consistent over a wide variety of circumstances. And that is why I pick the settings that I do within the system here. Now that said, this model has worked very well for us for a very long period of time, from the mid-2006 to current day. And today is November 25th, 2015, in case we need a date stamp here. So what happened a few months ago is, or not a few months ago, but a few weeks ago, OptionView had decided to make a model update. And when they did that, the model did not react properly. They had significant problems with that, or severe problems, I should say. And therefore, they backed out the update and went back to the original version. And we were initially happy, but what ended up happening is through observation, we found out that the model they went back to was not the original model. They thought that it was. They don't know why or what happened, but suffice it to say, this model reacts differently. If you take a look at this, it has a higher gamma than the previous model. In other words, it has a this peak here should be, this T plus 0 line should be flatter down this way, and this T plus 0 line in general should be a little flatter, and we should be a little bit flatter to the downside. So what this means is if you're positioned if you're positioned in the middle, it probably isn't going to make a whole lot of difference. If you're positioned out here, it's actually showing more negative delta than the position is going to react when the price moves up. So it's showing worse than what's probably going to happen. Also, if it comes to the downside, we're showing a significant gain in profits here. That is not true also. The reality is that isn't there. In reality, you're going to have a much flatter T plus 0 line. But in general, you're not going to have as flat a T plus 0 line as in your EI-OIO model. This other model, if you look at it, is a very flat T plus 0 line. But the reality is this position most likely is going to react if the price goes up in losing profit and loss, which is not shown on your T plus 0 line. And if the price goes down say down to this 1160 level here, this is very likely going to gain money, but not as much money as the other model had shown, but it's going to gain more than what's shown here. And this actually shows maybe a break even. So that is obviously upsetting some people because they've been trading for a long time using these delta numbers being very, very successful, and now the model's different. Well, the good news is that the systems are not that sensitive. In other words, in reality, 85% of the time, you can trade with this EIOIO model and do perfectly fine. And you would be able to trade with the variable model with its, even though it's different and showing more, 85% of the time you could also trade with this model and still do okay, right? Not only true for the M3, but it's also true for the bearish butterfly and the rock systems as well. So, my first statement is you can still trade with the normal guidelines on either the variable model or the EIOIO model. There are going to be consequences to doing either one because there are plus and minuses. Generally, like I said, 85% of the time, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference. You'll have different adjustment points. Your entry might be slightly different, but with normal market movement, the trade, like I said, it's not like you have to adjust it exactly this delta or that delta. You can be very flexible with the guidelines and rules. However, if you're using this particular model here, what's going to happen is you're going to be, when the market's up like this, you're going to tend to over adjust on the upside and make this flatter T+0 line, right? That's going to give you more downside risk than it shows. So, the pluses to that is if the market keeps grinding up, you're actually better off using this model than you would be using the previous variable model. However, if the market pulls back, then you're better off using the previous variable model or even the EIOIO model. So when we have a really choppy market, and to some extent, I've always done this, right? I've always compared the models. I take a look at my EIOIO model. I take a look at my variable model. I also take a look at my TOS model and my TOS smile model, which we'll talk about later. But just to get an idea, because I know intuitively from trading these for a long time that in certain market conditions, one model tends to be more representative price movement than the other. But if I have to have a beginner or even an intermediate trader, I'm going to tell them just to use one model because, it's confusing enough learning how to trade. And the reality is you will do well enough using one model where it's not actually an issue, right? You'll still be a very profitable trader with the systems, with any of the models you use, actually. So the point is there's pluses and minuses to either one. Now, since we've had this update and this has been more problematic, the thing that I've been doing is I realize obviously that this is more, or this model is different and it's showing more negative delta in this particular place. So that being the case, what I've been doing is I've been taking this model and the other model, and I'm averaging all my Greeks numbers. So I'm coming in here and I look at this and I say I'm minus 288 delta on my variable model and positive 366 vega. If I come in here and go to my other model, I am minus 51 delta and minus 114 vega. And I just do the calculations. I add this delta to the other delta, divide it by 2. I add this vega to the other vega and divide it by 2 to get a number that I'm going to use to run adjustments on the system. I'm also going to take actually a third measurement in here, and I'll share that later. But and that's where I'm going to make my decision point. I'm also going to take a look at my T+0 line here and take a look at my T+0 line on my other model. Right, I'm going to mentally picture a T+0 line that's kind of halfway in between the two lines, and that's what I'm going to use as a representative model for my T+0 line profile to give me the best or the most likely result with certain market moves, when the market moves certain ways. Like I said, This is because I understand that this model is not the same as the old model, and I want this to react. I want my position to react pretty much the way they always have. And again, it's not necessary to do that. You can still do fine either way, but I would do that if you're dealing with very large positions and you'd like them to react the same way that they always have. So hopefully that makes sense. Since we're on models, I'd like to talk about ThinkorSwim a little bit, because another thing that people may not know is that TOS also has different models. And their standard model, if you come up in here and you go set up application settings, display is individual implied volatility. This model here is very similar to the EIOIO option in option view. And it also has a similar deficiencies. In slow grinding up markets, it kind of goes crazy. So that being the case, you can use this with fairly good predictability in usually choppy markets, higher volatility markets. But when the markets get to the point where they start grinding up and you start getting big, wide put call skews and real heavy biases in the markets, in the option skews across the strike range, you're going to get some really unpredictable or T+0 lines that don't represent reality, just like you do with the EIOIO model. They have the same benefits, they have the same drawbacks. They also have another setting in here that is called Smile. So if you come up here, display. Oh, and we also have this fixed volatility per expiration date. Those ones are completely whacked out. That's true also for the third option in option view, which is called uniform, which is basically what this is. I would avoid using those, but you can come up here and use the volatility smile approximation. If you apply those, you can see the T+0 line changes, the delta number changes as well. We went from, if I come in here, right, we're at minus 53 with the smile. Without the smile, we're at about minus 60. So we're actually, this is after hours, but we're actually more negative delta with the individual one, which happens sometimes, right? They will swap back and forth between one another depending on what the market's doing. Right now, we are in, if you look at the charts, we are in a basic grind up. Usually, the opposite is in effect during a slow grind up like this, but not all the time. That's information, which is interesting. Anyway, coming back to our analyze, the smile setting on this is fairly representative of what option view, the previous option view variable model is, or what the previous model was. It will oftentimes, in the grinding up market, show you the sag and the T+0 line. It will often straighten out the down. If you're in the other model or the standard model with TOS, a lot of times this T+0 line drops down very, very quickly, and it really is not representative of what's going to happen to the downside. A lot of times putting it in the smile mode will flatten this out and make it down. Now, I do like this mode. I had worked with it in 2013 pretty consistently for multiple positions over a period of 4 to 6 months and tracked this compared to what option view was doing. I was trying to save people money who maybe had smaller accounts and didn't want to go into an option view type of setup. And, and they weren't really skilled traders. If you're really skilled traders, you want to go in and do like an option view so you can do your trade debriefs and your back testing and all that other stuff. But for new people who don't have a lot of money, I was trying to get something in TOS that kind of worked, that I didn't have to go into option view. So I took this, I studied this side by side. I mean, what I found is sometimes it will match the option view variable profile fairly closely, and other times it will not. So I found it to be a little bit inconsistent, I would say. So you might watch it for a period of 3 or 4 weeks or a month or sometimes even a little bit longer than that, and it seems to match up fairly well, and then all of a sudden it kind of goes a little bit crazy. So that that was one of the reasons I said, well, let's not recommend this and just push everybody over into option view. There was also another reason, and we'll go over the other reason in a moment, but that was one reason I did that. So, but now that option view is kind of goofy, I've been also taking this and I've been averaging it into my other position. So if you have this position here and we go to the volatility smile, right, this is showing us minus 53 delta. If I go to option view and I go to, then this is the same position, by the way. If I go into option view, it's showing you minus 288 delta. If I go into option view, every individual option on its own, I get minus 51 delta. So I'm going to weigh heavy towards this. So I'm going to add the 3 of these up. I'll divide them by 3, and I will use those for my delta number, and I'll also do the same thing for the Vega number. And again, I'll make my decisions off of those. So right now with my positions, and most of you know I've got millions of dollars in the market here. Most of my positions, I'm averaging those 3 numbers: the volatility smile for toss, the every individual option on its own, and the variable model in option view. And thus far, it has been doing fairly well. And I've been happy with that. Now, that said, option view is coming out with a new model, and we don't currently know how that model is going to react. They told us they're not going back to the old one. And the new model should be out in a couple of weeks. Once we get it out and they have it finalized, we can do back testing, we can do all kinds of things and see how that reacts, and either keep the same guidelines for the program or change the guidelines. Another thing that's going on is ONE, I hear through the grapevine, is working on a version that is going to also be more representative of what the price does. Currently, they're on a model similar to this EI-OIO model and the standard model for TOS. A new beta model is going to be closer to the old variable model from option view, was my guess, or at least that's what they're trying to do, so they can represent a consistent T plus 0 line over a wide variety of conditions. It doesn't get go wacky with when certain things happen. So they're working on that, and when they come out with something, we'll take a look at what they have, and if it works well, then great, that'll be another viable option for us. As of right now, like I said, we can trade on this EI-OIO model and the TOS model if we need to, and just realizing that under certain conditions, the T plus 0 line is not representative. Like I said, usually it's only a month or two that happens, and most of the time you'll still make out okay even when it does happen, but there will be specific times like 2013 when the market was when that T plus 0 line on the TOS model went crazy for a long period of time, and the market at the same time just kept going up and up and up. That combination would have caused probably multiple losses on an M3 trade, where if you're in the option view model, that wouldn't have necessarily happened. On the flip side, sometimes this EI-OIO model works better, right? Because on the variable model and option view, you're making these up adjustments, and the market actually comes back down again, which it does do once in a while. And if you end up, and what happens with the other model sometimes is you end up over adjusting, right? So there's no necessarily one model that's best for everything, but what we have here is it's kind of a pain in the neck for us, but it's certainly not a disaster. And like I said, to deal with it, what I've been doing is I've been averaging the TOS smile, the option view variable, and the EI-OIO model. Now, if you're going to use the smile model, 2 things you need to know. One is sometimes it goes crazy and it's not representative. So if something looks like it's really off, check up with your other models, see what they're doing, and you may want to disregard it. The second thing that happens with this is they do not, if you look at the option view graph, when they start combining put and call skews and doing other calculations on top of this, you'll see that the T plus 0 line separates from the dot, right? That's not necessarily a problem. That is just simply means that the theoretical values are different from the actual price, right? And that gives you this difference. Now, that doesn't mean the price is going to go to the theoretical value necessarily, but there's a difference there. What we're looking for in the variable model and in the SMILE model is, hey, what's the correct T plus 0 line profile? I want to know if the price goes up, am I going to lose money? If the price goes down, am I going to lose money? Or am I going to gain money? What's going to happen, right? So here we have a dot that's at minus $111. We have a T plus 0 line that's showing us positive $3,500. The way I'm going to read this is I'm going to make the assumption that the dot is going to stay where it is, and if the price goes up, then my profit and loss is going to drop. Say if I go all the way to here where the profit and loss hits zero, it's going to drop $3,500 from here to here. So if this dot is at zero and I get here, I'm going to assume I'm going to be down $3,500, right? If the dot goes, if I went all the way back here and I was trusting this T plus 0 line, then I would assume that when I got back here, it says my profit and loss should be 14,000. I'm actually going to be maybe 11,000, and I'm just going to assume it's going to follow this profile. And the dot's separate. It tells me my actual profit and loss. The thing with the TOS model, or the deficiency that it has, is when you're in SMILE or it doesn't matter which one you're in actually, but there is no dot that's different from the T plus 0 line. They only show you the T plus 0 line, which means is when the T plus 0 line comes in here and it inflates like this, so does your profit and loss. Therefore, your P&L is not accurate. Okay, it's going to be significantly different than what it really is. So that's one thing that you have to watch when you're SMILE, and that's another reason why I did not recommend this, especially to new people. They have enough to worry about. When their profit and loss is off like that, it's just too much for them. I mean, even intermediate people, again. I mean, once you get to a certain level, I mean, you can just look at this, and really, when you get to be a really good trader, you pretty much ignore your profit and loss throughout the trade anyway. You're really only concerned about your profit and loss when it's ready to close it or you're ready to max loss out. Other than that, you let the trade play out. That's the professional way to deal with it, but we know coming in that everybody's always concerned about profit and loss. They're like watching it every day, and if it's not accurate, then that's a real problem for them. So what I'll do is I'll realize this is not the real profit and loss. I can come in here, I can go to my other setting, right? I can come up into here, and by the way, this isn't necessarily always your real profit and loss either, but it's very, very close. If I come on this in this EI-OIO model, I see my profit and loss is about $100, say, right? If I want to know my real profit and loss, I actually have to go into my account and or come into these slices, take a look at all my options, what they've made and what they've lost, and see what the actual number is. That is actually sometimes different than this, but this is usually fairly close on this setting. That would be the setting of individual implied volatility setting. Your profit and loss is fairly close. If I come over here to the SMILE setting, my profit and loss actually goes up to $900 from $100, right? So it's not representative of actual profit and loss. So you kind of have to ignore the profit and loss, pay attention to the profile of the T plus 0 line, and say, this says 1,005. If I go up to 1220, it says I'm up 600 or 700. That means I lost about $400 if the market goes from here to here. That's what the model's telling me. Now I can come in here and I can take my real profit and loss of 100. Let's just call it $100, and I can say if it moves up here, I'm going to lose that much money, and that's going to be my new profit and loss. Hopefully that makes sense. So those are, that's what I'm doing right now to deal with the current option view situation, because like I said, their model is goofed up. So I'm averaging it between EI, OIO, and this TOS SMILE model, and I'm using those and running those for Greeks. I suggest on big positions that you might want to do the same. If you're a newer person and you have too much to think about, just use the regular variable model, or you can use the regular EIOIO model. Like I said, 85% of the time, it's going to be pretty much the same results, and over long periods of time, it will be. As you get better, you can maybe come in to do this other stuff. Or when OptionView comes out with this new model, or ONE comes out with its new model, then we can take a look at those, and if we need to adjust guidelines for whatever, we will. But chances are we won't have to, because like I said, it really is such the trading systems are so flexible, or should I say they're so durable. I'm not sure what to put a word is, but it's the only time you're going to have a difference is in extreme conditions, and usually extreme conditions don't last very long. So it really shouldn't be an issue there. So that's what I have, other than to thank all the students and people who have helped me or helped me stay on top of this issue. We have Jay Winger, who's been really good, and Ron, and I'm going to butcher his last name, but Bertano, and I'm sorry, Ron. But very good. Joe Gibson, and of course there's been lots of others who've actually given me a lot of information, but those guys have been working really hard on this, and keeping us update data and information. And I know they've been on other forums as well, talking about this. So I'd love to thank everybody for the support, and for those guys that are kind of a little bit freaked out. Don't get too concerned with it. I mean, obviously, if you're overly concerned and you're going to be freaked out about it, get out of the market. I mean, you don't want to be trading that way. It's not the right mental attitude to be in. But the reality is, I'm fine with it with all the money that I have in the market, and I'm just taking this averaging thing and doing that. And as far as trade debriefs, right, you guys who are in advanced courses, or maybe one-on-ones who are doing trade debriefs, it's just a matter of adapting to what's going on here. So if you're not using your option view delta for decisions, just write down the delta and vega numbers or whatever that you are. So you come to the end of the day where you're going to make your adjustment decision. Take all your numbers, average them, write down, this was my delta, this was my vega, this was my T plus zero line projection. In other words, I lost so many dollars. In other words, if the market came from here and went up 30 points, I lost so many dollars. It came down 30 points, I lost or gained so many dollars. So you have your T plus zero line projection, you have your Greeks numbers that you were working with, and then you have on your paper, you know what they were. So you know why you didn't adjust, even if you went back in option view and back trader and it was different. Now, of course, when you go in back trader and you're doing your back trading to do your trade comparisons, you're going to want to, if you're averaging live, you're going to want to average your ThinkorSwim and you can do your ThinkorSwim in on demand. That's very time consuming, but you might want to do that for specific situations. But in general, you can average your EIOIO model and your variable model and get a close enough number where 90%, 95% of the time it will be fine. So hopefully that helps. And again, thank you for the support, and we will keep you updated when we get the new models out and we get a chance to back trade them. And anybody else who's interested in doing extensive back trading with some of these models, let me know, and we can get you involved when they come out. All right, thanks everybody, and have a great day.